Compendium Podcast hosted by Leadership Books. In just a moment, our host, Joseph Baker, will be joining us, along with a very special guest. Before we get started, I would like to introduce you to Joseph. He's a podcaster, event producer, writer, speaker, and audience builder. His passion is to help authors, speakers, and entrepreneurs build their audiences to monetize their leadership. Won't you please welcome our host, Joseph Baker.
Well, thanks so much for that intro. Welcome, everyone, to the Compendium Podcast. I am here today with a very special guest. Today, we have Larry Ragland. Larry has almost 30 years experience in local church ministry. Alongside his wife, Sandy, and their two daughters, he founded Solid Rock Church in Birmingham, Alabama. Together, they have pastored the same church for over 25 years. Larry is also an evangelist who has preached the gospel in several states and in many countries. In 1996, he founded Ambassadors Bible College, which has equipped church planters, pastors, and missionaries around the world. Larry is also the founder. He's the director of the Ambassadors Network, a fellowship of pastors, leaders, and churches from across America. His passion is to lead leaders and equip this generation for maximum kingdom impact. Wow, what an intro. Welcome to the show, Larry.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Yes, great to have you on the show today. Great to interview in person. I believe this is going to be a wonderful episode for all of our viewers and all of our listeners today. So Larry, tell me a little bit about what's going on in your life right now and what is inspiring you to write these days.
Well, thank you so much. And yes, a lot of stuff is going on in my life right now. One thing in particular that has really impacted my life greatly is the fact that I have just been, just in the last 2 years, become a brand new pawpaw. So I've got my first grandbaby who is keeping me very busy, making me feel young again. But as you said, Sandy and I have been pastoring our church now. It's coming up on 29 years and been in ministry over 30 years. And we're excited because, you know, all the stuff that's been going on around the world that we've all been a part of that has just been difficult on so many people. At the same time, we see in the midst of that just a great, I want to call it revival, awakening, a great, what we call the remnant is rising. There is the people that are of God are very excited about being alive in this moment. And I tell people all the time at our church and in our network and so forth, you know, we do not curse this moment. We're very thankful that in God's infinite, all-knowing knowledge that he's omniscient, he chose to trust us in this moment, to be alive in this moment. And we're not going to take it lightly. So we're excited about what God is doing. We're excited about the kingdom. And I'm excited about writing, because a lot of the things that I'll be writing about, and I am writing about currently, is to equip this generation for this moment, for us not to miss the moment that God has blessed us to be a part of.
That's awesome. What a great time to be alive. You know,
Yes.
There's a lot of people that feel like maybe the best times were behind us, but I get the feeling that you believe that the best is actually in front of us. It's to come.
Absolutely. Oh, I truly believe that this is the greatest opportunity for the local church and for the body of Christ, certainly of our generation and maybe of a few generations, because it has caused people to go really back to the basics. Some of the things that we have incorporated into, I guess you would say, Western Christianity and so forth, are sort of falling by the wayside because, you know, it's sort of distracted us from the mission, the Great Commission. And so I'm very, very excited about it. And for those that are excited about God, there is opportunities for people to be used, I believe, in this moment, because people are hungry. They're looking for authenticity. They've gone through and they've seen the fake and they're ready to see the real deal. So I tell our folks, and I live by this. It's sort of funny little statement that I say that is deep, but yet also pretty simple. And I simply say this, you know, I'm going to live while I'm alive and I'll die when I'm dead. So while I'm here, I'm going to live, and I'm going to, you know, Jesus said to occupy until he comes, work while it's day, for the night comes when no man can work. So we're on a mission. We're excited. We're on a mission to write and equip books. We're on a mission to speak and encourage people, to let them know this is the greatest moment of the church, if you'll step up and be a part of it.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, I agree with all of that. So keep going. Keep going.
Thank you.
So let's get into some of your writing specifically. You have a forthcoming book that is going to be available for pre-order. We'll talk a little bit about that later in the podcast. But when it comes to the writing that you're doing these days, what's sort of the big problem or the big idea that you are addressing?
Well, I guess you would call it, for me, I call it the vein that I'm in right now, flowing in. And that vein is, as we just spoke of, this moment, the remnant. One of the things I talk about is the remnant rising. I'm always talking about there's a remnant rising. And the reality of it is this: a remnant is the part of the cloth that when someone was cutting out their design for a garment or so forth, and the pieces that were cut out and that could not fit into that garment was just sort of thrown off to the side, maybe discarded. And there is this feeling that there's no use for them. There's this feeling that that they can't do what the rest of that fabric did, that they're maybe weird shapes. They're just, it just doesn't seem like they could have any purpose. And many times they're turned into things like dish rags, grease rags. They're just pieces laying over the side. But I believe that because of all that we've gone through, He's not forgot about the remnant. He's not forgot about the people that may not seem qualified, that may not seem as educated as others, but God knows where they're at. And I talk a lot about Joseph and the coat of many colors. And the truth is, you really get right down to it. He didn't have a fabric dyeing factory there. So where did he get all the different colors? More than likely, it was pieces of remnant that he sewn together to make a coat of many colors. And that's one of my forthcoming books is to speak about how God has put in bringing people back together that seem to be discarded, that seem to be hopeless. But God is saying, look, I haven't forgotten you. I know where you're at. And this is the moment that God's bringing the remnant back together. And he's taken people that thought God was through with them and giving them hope that not only is he not through with them, he's about to do something in their life that's going to blow their mind because this is the moment for the remnant to rise. So that's sort of the vein that I've been in right now as a minister and just as a man.
That is great. If you had to flip through the pages of that book and just pull out, a secret or an aha moment, just something that even if somebody didn't get the chance to read the book, something you would really want them to know, what do you think that would be?
Well, the name of the book is I See Greatness in You. And it is called I See Greatness in You because it is my story. It is a story of abuse. It is a story of horrible abuse, of, one of the things that is so prominent in this world today, and that is father issues. My father was very, very abusive to me physically and certainly verbally, scarred me deeply. At the time of this recording, I'm in my mid-50s, but, the first, I would say, 5 to 10 years of my life shaped so much of the man that I became because of the abuse that I went through. I think of so many things that are in the book. In one particular instance, I was probably 9 or 10 years old, and many times my mother had threatened to leave my father because of the abuse and because she was the typical abused wife and fell into that trap of codependency and believing the lies and the promises of change. We would stay and we would stay. And he was a master manipulator. In one particular time that I describe in length, it's very difficult to even now as in my grandfather stage of my life to even talk about it. But I witnessed my father load a double barrel 12-gauge shotgun in front of me, age 9, and put both of the barrels in his mouth and grab my little finger and put it on the trigger. And with the barrel in his mouth, screaming at me to pull the trigger and to kill him. His words blow my brains out. And I'm just screaming at him saying, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it, Dad. And he said, well, you might as well do it, because if you don't pull the trigger and you leave with your mother, then I want you to know that I'm going to pull the trigger and I'm still going to do it. And either way, you'll spend the rest of your life knowing that you killed me. You were the reason that I died. So you might as well just go ahead and pull the trigger so you'll have that satisfaction of knowing you actually did it and finally shut me up. And it just, that moment scarred me so deeply. And it was just one example that's in the book of how I was just, my mind was just wrecked. And of course, my mom ended up panicking and staying, and nothing changed. And it even got even worse. And of course, we detail even that more in the book. But it set me on a course of almost like I was talking about that throwaway rag. I just really felt most of my life, all the way up until my early adult childhood, I had never really had anyone to ever speak anything in my life. And so I learned how to be the master manipulator myself. And if you know anything, and maybe your listeners and viewers can connect to this, is that when you are abused and you are destroyed mentally, one of the first things you say is, when I grow up, I don't want to be anything like this. I'm not going to be anything like this. But honestly, I've seen it in my own life, and I've seen it in lives of being in the pastoring ministry for so many years, that without a miracle of God, you will mentally go down that road. And I detail in depth in the book how I ended up going down the same road, and just couldn't even believe that I had become that until the fateful moment of the book that everything changed for me.
That's very powerful. Very powerful. There are so many people these days that go through so many types of abuse, whether or not they experience the exact abuse that you did. I'm sure this book is going to relate with a lot of people. There's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of abuse, even unfortunately, that comes down from parents, and that ends up affecting our lives deeply. So I love everything I'm hearing so far. It sounds like you really wrote a book that was deeply personal to you, but is going to relate to, dare I say, a majority of people,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have one particular friend that really summed it up for me. And then even just this morning, talking to another pastor, he told me the same thing. But this particular gentleman that had read part of the manuscript, he told me, he said, I had the most amazing father and the most amazing mother. He said, if you looked up the definition of the perfect family, I had the perfect family. And he said, so I knew some of your story, Larry. He said, but when I read your book, I just couldn't believe how it resonated with me as well. Even though I had the great father, I have been dropped. I have been broken. I have trusted someone with deep, intimate things about my life to be betrayed, crushed by people that I looked up to. And that's what the story is about, is, it's basically one man's story, but everyone's journey, is what I tell everyone, is that everyone can relate to this. And as I write throughout the book and tell the things that not only happened in my childhood, but unbelievable tragedy that happened even throughout my adult life, is that I parallel them with some of the most famous people in Scripture. And that is, is telling us that even the big famous names that we can all name as the great Bible characters all had dysfunctional life. Many of them had been crushed, and many of them had been let down. And they needed someone in their life to see something in there they couldn't see in themselves. And so my purpose in this book is to be that someone, because you may not have that someone that could ever see greatness in you, that could ever see the DNA of God in you, because we know we're all created in the image of God. God is the greatest there is. So the DNA of greatness is in us, and it's put in us by our Creator. But so many times, and quite frankly, most of the time, the only way we ever really see that potential that's in us is when someone else is used by God to see it. And that, of course, is the 5 words of the book, I see greatness in you. When those faithful words were said to me in the, quite frankly, most devastating moment in my life, it not just wrecked me, but it wrecked me in a good way. It was literally the amazing power of words that we've heard all our life. These words that had destroyed me, these words that had shaped me, created, quite frankly, in making me a master manipulator, a master liar. Everybody saw this successful, funny jock in high school, popular, all this stuff. I had learned how to create that image, because that's what my father was. When we would go to church, he'd be on the stage, all these things. People thought he was one thing, but then we lived with another man. And I had learned how to become this, what everybody thought, my goodness, he's got everything. But I was a fraud. I was a liar. I was destroyed, and I was destroying people around me. And just like everybody, just like in Scripture, just like in my life, God's not going to let that happen forever. There came a moment in my life that everything come crashing down. And just when I thought it was over, just when I thought everything that was prophesied and spoke over my life is coming to pass, God had another plan and used one particular person in my life to change everything.
That is awesome. Over and over and over again, I hear this type of testimony that God will use your pain to not only redeem your life, but help redeem other people's lives.
Amen.
And it's very, very powerful. I'm excited to read this book myself. Just to share one quick story of how I relate to this. My older brother, who was 30 at the time, he passed away from drug use, and I was about 26 at the time. And I remember it was obviously devastating. And when I did make it back to church a couple of weeks later, I was on staff at a church, and I was in the back of the sanctuary that day. Typically, I'd be on stage, but I was in the back of the sanctuary, and just randomly, this woman comes up to me and she asked me for prayer. She said, "Would you please pray for me?" And I said, "Of course." And he said, "What can I pray for you for?" And she said, "Well, my brother is doing drugs, and I'm afraid he's going to die."
Wow.
And just the impact of that moment, realizing, like, God, you're already redeeming, this pain that I'm experiencing by. And then, of course, I was able to minister to her in a profound way that I would not have been able to do had I not experienced that in my own life. So
Absolutely.
I resonate with the message of this book very much.
Absolutely. Well, praise the Lord. And I thank God for that testimony. And you're so right. It's being in ministry, there's so many things that you hear said that almost becomes cliches, that what the devil meant for bad, God can use for good. And, we all say that, but it's true. And they've become so prominent sayings because it is true. And, but the key is you have to let him do that. You have to be willing to let him do that. And, I don't want to give too much about the book away, but I do feel like in my spirit right now that some people need to hear this, that, the day I had asked this sweet, beautiful blonde girl who had just turned 18 years old. She had just graduated high school. I asked her to marry me, and she agreed. But what she didn't realize is that she had agreed to marry someone that was not real. And I had even taken that pain of my past, and it shaped me so much and got so good at living that lie that I had caused her what I felt like to fall in love with a lie. And I thought I was going to get away with it. And, just before we were to be married, we were both kids. Everything came crashing down. I was arrested, and I was standing before the judge, and she was there. It was the most shameful moment of my life. And so I played that scenario out in my mind. Okay, yeah, everything he said about me, he was right. He told me I was a bum. He told me I would never be anything. Everything that was said about me is coming to pass. And so I knew what I was going to do to her life because I had seen what had happened to my life, and I couldn't do that to her. And so I called it the longest walk of my life, was just a few steps out of that little small town courthouse. And I begged her to walk away. I begged her to keep the ring. I said, I promise you, Sandy, I'll never, ever hold anything against you. I'll never speak evil of you. This is my fault. And I know, and it's still hard to talk about, but I know what I'm going to do to you, because that's what I've always done. And so I'm begging you to walk away. You don't deserve this life. And that little girl said to me, "I'm not going to leave you, Larry." And I said, why in the world would you ever stay with me? I have nothing to offer you. I know what I'm going to do. And she grabbed my hand and she said to me, standing there in front of that courthouse, "Because when I look at you, I see greatness in you." And when she said that, I was 20, she was 18. My knees buckled. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that someone would know the truth about me and still see something in me. And to this day, I still ask her, "What made you say that? Had you ever thought that before?" And she'll say, "It wasn't me, it was God." She said, "God needed you to know that."
Mm.
And I just was speechless. And she said, "And I'm going to stay with you till everyone else sees what I see." and it changed my life. And the first part of the book, that's what I say. I say, everybody needs a Sandy, but everybody doesn't have a Sandy. And I'm aware of that. So I want this book, I See Greatness in You, to be your Sandy. I want it to be your moment. I want someone in your life to do it for you. But I also want this book to show you that everything you need to be great, not in man's sense and not in a prideful sense, but everything you need to be great in the eyes of God and your purpose and your destiny is already within you if you've gave your life to Christ. And I want the book to show you that it's not time to walk away. It's not time to give up. It's not time to accept the inevitability of failure in your life. No, there's greatness in you. And that's why we call it, I See Greatness in You, because it's not necessarily me saying it. It's God saying it. He sees greatness in you. Sorry to get all emotional and go on that.
Wow.
But it just took me back again.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, this book is coming from a very real place, and that's part of what makes it so powerful. Absolutely. So,
thank you. And I want to say one other quick thing too, is just because that moment happened, that didn't mean the rest of my life is great, because Sandy and I detail horrible, horrible things that we have to go through, even as ministers, that we had to hold on to each other, that we had to fight for, and we had to believe that in each of our lives. And it's a journey. Just because someone speaks into your life something that you need to hear doesn't mean that the battles are over, but it will give you strength to fight the battles to come. And that's what we want to do, is we want to help you see that there is a reason that you're alive today. It's because God chose you to be alive in this moment. He didn't choose you just to exist. He chose you to do something great and impactful for your generation.
That is awesome. Well, once again, to everyone who is listening or watching today, I'm here with Pastor Larry Ragland, and his forthcoming book, I See Greatness in You, is going to be available for pre-order. Larry, tell us a little bit about where we can go to get a hold of this book when it's ready.
Thank you so much. And I would like to say that how honored and excited I am to be a part of Leadership Books and the vision that Leadership Books has for releasing the book, I See Greatness in You, and coming titles as well that we're working on. I believe they're going to release a pre-order website. It's iseegreatnessinYouBook.com. I don't have an exact date of when it will be released, but at the time of this recording, and I believe it will be released somewhere around the fall and the Christmas season of 2022. But you can go to iseegreatnessinYouBook.com and go ahead and pre-order your copy so that you'll be first in line when it comes out, to be able to get that in your hands and impact your life as quickly as possible. And that is my greatest desire. My greatest desire is to use my pain. As you said, I wrote this from a very vulnerable and a very raw point in my life, and writing it and having to get away from everything to just be with myself and God, and having to relive some things that, quite frankly, I thought I had put on the shelf. And it was not an easy process, but I believe that the Lord has put it together in a way that it will touch you and it will change your life. And you can get that at iseegreatnessinYouBook.com to pre-order.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to staying in touch with you. I look forward to reading the book myself. For those listening, you can go to leadershipbooks.store. Also, once again, iseegreatnessinYouBook.com. Be sure to head over and get your pre-order in for this forthcoming release. Pastor Larry, thank you again for joining us today for the Compendium Podcast. I feel like this has been an excellent episode, and just personally, I feel a connection with you, and I feel that connection that I even feel with this forthcoming book, I feel like it's going to have a deep, deep and broad impact. So thank you for all of the time that you put into this. Thank you for your vulnerability with your stories. Thank you for really dedicating your life to minister and impact people. Thank you so much for that.
Joseph, I appreciate it so much. Thank you. And thank you for all you do. Once again, thank you, Leadership Books, and to all the listeners. I look forward to connecting with you and doing life together with you. Thank you again.
Thank you for joining us for today's broadcast. I do hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And be sure to visit us online at leadershipbooks.store. There you'll find the works of some of the finest thought leaders today. And be sure to tune in here each week to gain even deeper insights from one of those leaders on the Compendium Podcast.